Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The sun was setting behind the skyscrapers of New York, casting long, shifting shadows on the crowded sidewalks. The honking of taxis, the murmur of hurried conversations, and the clatter of shoes on concrete created an urban symphony. Amid this tumult, Jonathan Pryce walked briskly, his eyes glued to his phone. His thoughts were absorbed by an impending acquisition and a prestigious gala he was to attend that evening. His impeccable suit and hurried demeanor made him almost invisible to the world, as if he were alone in his bubble of power and money. But in a dark alley, barely lit by the yellowish glow of a street lamp, a young man crouched on the sidewalk, clutching a dirty blanket. Marcus Williams, 19 years old, had been homeless for several years. His face, marked by fatigue and hardship, remained nonetheless sharp and alert. Every sound, every movement in the street, reminded him that his survival depended on his vigilance. As Jonathan stopped in front of a kiosk to grab an energy drink he didn't recognize, a cry rang out, clear and full of urgency. "Don't drink that." The passers-by didn't stop. But Jonathan, surprised by the intensity of the voice and the firmness of the tone, froze. He turned his head and saw Marcus, his eyes wide open, his gaze imploring. The bottle he was pointing at had fallen onto the sidewalk, almost insignificant to the world around him, but for Marcus, it represented imminent danger. You shouldn't," Marcus stammered, his voice trembling but determined. Jonathan, amused at first and then intrigued, felt a shiver run through him. This young man was not like the other homeless people he had encountered during his charity work or his brief walks through the streets. There was a pure urgency in his eyes, a clarity of mind that money and power had never been able to give him. Jonathan placed the bottle on the kiosk counter. He took a deep breath, aware that this simple act, listening to a cry in the street, would change the course of his life. Marcus, for his part, felt a strange warmth of hope. For the first time in a long time, someone had listened to him. This moment, suspended in time, sealed their fate. Two lives that were completely different, one rich and powerful, the other fragile and invisible, were about to cross paths unexpectedly, and this cry in an alley would trigger a series of events capable of transforming not only their present, but also the future of dozens of lives around them. Jonathan Pryce stood frozen for a few seconds, the bottle abandoned on the kiosk counter. He couldn't help but look at Marcus Williams, the young homeless man with bright eyes and an intense expression. There was something in that gaze that deeply intrigued him, a rare lucidity, a life force that money and power couldn't buy. "What are you talking about?" asked Jonathan, in a voice that mixed amusement and curiosity. "That drink," Marcus stammered, hesitating for a moment before finding the courage to speak. "It can make you sick. I've seen people get sick after drinking it. I couldn't just stand by and not warn you." Jonathan felt a shiver run through him. The street was full of shouts, passers-by, and invisible dangers, but this one, Marcus's, had a genuine, almost primal urgency. Are you serious?" said Jonathan, slightly incredulous. "Absolutely," replied Marcus. "I know I'm nobody, but I couldn't let you drink that." There was a silence. Jonathan observed the young man. His clothes were dirty and worn, his shoes with holes let in the rain and cold, but his attitude showed a dignity and determination that he had never seen in any of his associates or employees. "Come with me," Jonathan said suddenly, without thinking. "We'll sit somewhere." Marcus looked at him, surprised. "For what?" "Because," Jonathan hesitated for a moment, searching for his words. "Because you seem to know something I don't. And I want to understand." They settled into a small cafe a few steps away. Jonathan offered Marcus a sandwich and a hot coffee. The young man, wary, slowly accepted, as if he feared a trap, but the atmosphere was strange. For the first time in a long time, he felt that someone was truly listening to him. Marcus recounted his life, the loss of his family, life on the streets, hunger, cold, nights spent searching for shelter, and constant danger. He also explained how these hardships had made him observant, able to spot the slightest danger and survive in a world that always seemed to want to crush him. Jonathan listened attentively, fascinated. He had never met anyone capable of transforming survival experiences into genuine life lessons. "Marcus," said Jonathan after a long silence, "I'm going to offer you something unexpected. A chance that no one else will give you." Marcus raised an eyebrow in disbelief. "Me? Why me?" "Because you see the world differently," Jonathan replied. "And what I'm looking for is exactly that." That day, in that small cafe, two worlds that seemed worlds apart, one of power, money, and ambition, the other of survival, pain, and courage, began to draw closer. It was the beginning of an unlikely relationship, where mentorship and friendship would intertwine with transformation and mutual learning. A few weeks after they met, Marcus Williams accepted Jonathan Price's offer. He was no longer just a young homeless man on the street, he now had a foot in a world he would never have dared to imagine. Jonathan's office, located on the 42nd floor of a skyscraper, was bathed in light and glass, with a dizzying panoramic view of Manhattan. Marcus watched silently. The walls were decorated with modern artwork, state-of-the-art computers hummed softly, and employees in smart suits moved about with almost military precision. The contrast with the street, with its noise, chaos, and constant improvisation, could not have been more striking. Jonathan welcomed him warmly, but with strict rules. "Here, Marcus, you'll have to learn fast. I don't expect you to know about finance or the markets, but I do expect observation, instinct, and courage from you. What you have on the street, you'll turn into strength here." Marcus immersed himself in his new role. The first few days were difficult: professional jargon, dress codes, endless meetings, complex strategies. But he observed, learned, and asked relevant questions. Soon, Jonathan noticed something astonishing: Marcus had an ability to see problems that no one else noticed, details invisible to even the most experienced executives. One afternoon, during a tense meeting with investors, Jonathan hesitated over a risky strategic decision. Marcus, sitting in the corner of the room, gently intervened. "Wait, if you launch this product now, there will be a flaw that consumers will notice immediately. You could lose much more than you gain." The room fell silent. Jonathan stared at Marcus for a moment, then nodded. The company followed his advice, averting a potential crisis. This small victory made everyone realize that Marcus's presence wasn't accidental. But Marcus's greatest lesson wasn't in numbers or strategies, it was in understanding people. He saw hidden ambitions, masked fears, silent rivalries. His vision, shaped by surviving on the streets, became a valuable asset. For Jonathan, it was a humbling experience. This young man he had met by chance in an alleyway offered a perspective that neither money nor a traditional education could provide. And for Marcus, each day spent in this luxurious world boosted his confidence, while reminding him that he should never forget his roots. One evening, as they were leaving the office together, Jonathan turned to Marcus. "You know, you've changed the way I see my company, and myself." Marcus smiled slightly, tired but proud. "And you gave me a chance that no one else would have given me. I won't let you down." Their relationship solidified, a blend of mentorship, respect, and an unlikely friendship. Together, they would discover that their alliance could not only transform a company, but change the course of entire lives. Several years had passed since Marcus Williams joined Jonathan Price's company. Marcus had gone from a simple observer to a key collaborator, capable of providing innovative solutions and anticipating problems that no one else saw. But nothing had prepared him for what was to come. One morning, Jonathan entered his office, frowning. The front page of every newspaper read: "Scandal at Price Industries, suspected dubious practices." The articles described serious accusations, embezzlement, document forgery, and regulatory violations. Even though Jonathan knew it was all false, the immediate effect was devastating: panicked investors, worried partners, and clients withdrawing their contracts. The reputation of his empire was at stake. "Marcus, I don't understand how this could have happened," said Jonathan, his voice tense but controlled. Marcus, sitting opposite him, frowned. He had studied every document, every transaction since the beginning of the case. This wasn't an accident, Jonathan. Someone fabricated this evidence to bring you down. There are inconsistencies in the files that the media haven't seen. For days, Marcus worked tirelessly. He pored over thousands of documents, traced financial flows, contacted informants, and cross-checked every piece of information with his street-level observation and logic skills. Every detail, no matter how insignificant it seemed, could be a piece of the puzzle. One evening, while the city slept, Marcus arrived with a large file. "I've found something," he announced, breathless. "The evidence has been manipulated. The signatures are forged, and some transactions don't even exist. If we can present this to the authorities and our partners, we can turn everything around." Jonathan looked at him, a mixture of admiration and gratitude in his eyes. "Marcus, you just saved my company and my reputation." Marcus shook his head modestly. "No, we saved it together." The next day, Jonathan called a press conference. With Marcus at his side, he presented evidence of the manipulation, denounced those responsible, and reaffirmed the integrity of his company. The media, surprised by the clarity and strength of the documents, had to revise their articles. Investors regained confidence, and Price Industries emerged from the crisis stronger and more respected than before. This ordeal profoundly changed their relationship. Jonathan understood that Marcus was no longer just an employee or a protégé, he had become a strategic partner and a loyal friend. And Marcus realized that his ability to survive on the streets, his courage, and his instincts had the power to transform not only his own life, but also the lives of others. As the media storm subsided, Jonathan placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "You know, if you hadn't shouted that day in that alley, none of this would have been possible." Marcus smiled, humble but proud. Sometimes, a simple shout is enough to change the course of things. A few years after the crisis that had nearly destroyed Price Industries, Marcus Williams was no longer the homeless youth he had once been. Thanks to Jonathan Price, he had become co-director of the company, recognized for his unique vision and infallible instincts. But what he valued most was not luxury or power, but the opportunity to help those who, like him, had been left behind. Together, Jonathan and Marcus set up a program to support homeless youth, scholarships, internships, and training workshops to teach them skills they could use to build a future for themselves. Every success these young people achieved was a shared victory. Marcus saw it as a sweet and just revenge against the hardships he himself had faced. One morning, Marcus was walking down an alley he knew so well. It was the same one where he had shouted to warn Jonathan, the day it had all begun. He looked around, memories flooding back, the cold, the fear, the loneliness, and now, change. This same street, once a symbol of his vulnerability, had become the starting point of a new life. Jonathan joined him, smiling as he watched Marcus thinking. "So, this is where it all began," he said softly. "Yes," replied Marcus, a smile on his lips. "Who would have thought that a simple shout could change everything?" Jonathan placed a hand on his shoulder. "You shouted for me, and in reality, you saved both our lives." Their paths, so different yet now intertwined, bore witness to the power of attentiveness, courage, and resilience. Marcus had transformed his pain into strength, his vigilance into strategy, and his survival into a life lesson for others. Jonathan, for his part, had learned that a true leader is not measured solely by their achievements or wealth, but by their ability to recognize the potential and value of others, even where no one else sees it. Years later, Marcus and Jonathan continued to walk the streets of New York, no longer as a billionaire and a homeless person, but as partners and mentors. Together, they had proven that destiny is never fixed. A simple gesture, a voice in the street, could rewrite lives and offer an unexpected future to those who dared to believe in the impossible. And so, the cry of a young homeless man became the key to profound change, not only for him, but for dozens of lives, transforming a story of survival into a story of hope and rebirth.